Mr. Ketanji. We will start today's webinar in 5 minutes. Before that, let me take you through our agenda. Today, we will have interactive session with puzzles, polls, and interactions. After every one of the 10 technique apart from 10 minutes question answers at the end. PM forum will start in some time and will continue for an hour till logical break, which is set by the speaker. At the end of the today's forum, we will have question answer sessions for 10 minutes, followed by vote of thanks and certificate giving. Video details will be provided to all our participants through email ID as per attendance. Let me introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Karthik Ramamurthy. Karthik Ramamurthy is a project, program, portfolio management, strategy and leadership expert and best-selling author of the Global Project Solution book, Say Yes to Project Success. He is an engaging and motivational global speaker who has presented 125 plus sessions in our dozen countries. He is the number one influencer in 5 topics on projectmanagement.com: leadership, organizational cultures, ethics, talent management, and stakeholder management. Karthik has been a PMI volunteer and volunteer leader since 2005 with several roles including chapter volunteer, chapter president, PMI National Conference chairman, and active member of PMI Awards Chapter Awards Excellence Committee, PMI India Awards jury, and so on. A graduate of PMI's Leadership Institute Masterclass. Karthik holds dual management master's degree, MCA and MBA. He is PMP and BASSM certified. Let's start our session. Today, Karthik ji will talk on the topic 10 time tested techniques for project success. Over to Mr. Karthik.
Thank you very much, Ganesh for that excellent introduction. Actually, I have one complaint about you. You spoke so much about me. As a project manager, I try to under-promise and over-deliver, but now you've raised the expectations, but I'll try to do my best. Thank you very much. So let me just share my deck. Do let me know once you're able to see it.
Yeah, we are able to see, sir.
Okay. So let's start today's session with, I have a question. What is the level of your stressometer today? We are not doing a poll right now. You can type in the chat box what your level of stress is. I know COVID is kind of coming down, but we say in Europe, the wave is starting again. So what do you think is the level of your stress? You can type in the chat box. And Girishji, you could just read out, we changed this particular poll, but if you could just read out what people are saying. On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your level of stress today?
Abbas has said high.
High? Okay.
High, yeah.
Anybody saying low? Then we should take lessons from them, maybe yoga or meditation or something like that. So anybody saying low or medium, Girishji?
No, nobody.
Okay. So what we will do is let's do some brain work, and don't tell me this raised your level of stress. But I have a crossword clue for you. Around 15 years back, I used to compile the cryptic crossword for the Hindu 10 times a month. So what you have here is a crossword clue. It says Invader Emil reconstructed Mumbai attraction. Right? So think of crosswords and think of anagrams. So can anyone type what an anagram is? I'm pretty sure Priya Patra knows. I see her on that list, and Priya has attended my session. So I'm pretty sure she knows what an anagram is. So if nobody else can find out, Priya, you can actually type. So anybody typing out what an anagram is? Any responses, Girishji, on the chat? Because I'm not able to see the chat box directly. So if anybody types out what an anagram is.
Rearranging of words, Shikha Singh.
Absolutely. You are perfectly right, Shikha. So if you take the letters in Met, Japan, Grocer, and you rearrange it, you actually get project manager. You'll see that it is the same number of letters, only rearranged in a different format. Now, what I want you to do is, I want you to rearrange a set of letters in the clue, right? The one you see right on the top, invader, Emir, reconstructed Mumbai attraction. The answer when we say 6,5, that means there are two words. The first word is 6 letters and the second letters. Now, as a crossword compiler, sometimes I give clues on where that anagram letters are, right? So in this case, it is the word reconstructed, right? Reconstructed says the letters in invader Emir are reconstructed, and when you rearrange them, you'll get a Mumbai attraction, which is 6 letters and 5 letters. So let's see who can get it first. So normally in a real session, I'd have smiley balls, which I'll actually give to the person who answers. Since we can't do that in a virtual session, Girishji will note down the name of the person who got the answer first. And if we can connect on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, I have around 17,500 connections on LinkedIn and 12,000 on Twitter followers. So I'll tweet out your name as the winner of one of the contests in my session. So get your brains working. It's fairly easy. For you in Mumbai, 6,5 itself, we can find out. But if you take rearrange invader Emil, that should be able to give you the answer. So let's see who can find out first. Invader Emil. So looks like Sunday morning, there's a little bit of a starting trouble. So let me help out by telling you the very, very first letter of the first word is the letter M. Right, so in invader Emir, you know M will be the first letter of the answer word. Any answers so far? Okay, one more clue. Anybody? So one more clue. Okay, the last letter of the second word is the letter E. So the first word starts with M. The second word ends with E. So it is M dash 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 followed by dash 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 E. Come on, Mumbai attraction. A lot of you would go there on weekends.
No, somebody has already mentioned it. Marine Drive.
Oh, who was the one who mentioned it?
It's in the chat box.
Can you read out the name?
It's in question and answer.
Okay, it's in question answer. I'm not able to see it. So, Irishi, you can just write down the name of the first two people who answered it, and then we will do a shout out. So, the answer, if you take the letters invader ME, right? INVADER you get Marine Drive, right? And that's where I think, if I guess right, I've been to Mumbai a few times. I think that's where you have the Queen's necklace, right? The glittering lights at night. So that said, let's move on quickly to the agenda, right? Today there are compressed timelines, budgets are low, the customer keeps demanding more. So project success, a lot of research studies show actually it's only around 30%, 30 to 35%. Success rates are little higher in agile projects, but still it is not even reaching the halfway mark. So we will look at top 20 global project failure factors, right? And I'll cover 10 time-tested techniques. We're going to keep this very, very interactive. So at the end of every technique, we're going to have polls throughout, but at the end of every technique, I'm actually going to give the chance for two people to either share their perspective about the tip, short bit, just around a minute, or ask a question on that particular tip, and Sunil will mute and mute those people who will share. Right. So let's keep this running. I'll end with a summary and some Q&A. We may keep the Q&A a little short because we are already taking questions all through for every tip. Right. So this session is based on my global book, Say Yes to Project Success. Now, I used to be a project PMI exam trainer and certification trainer for a long time. And I felt people pass, they study hard, they pass the PMI exam, and then a lot of them go back to their projects and manage projects the same old way. So though they may have the letters PMI after their name, their success rates don't improve. Which is why when I did my PMI sessions, I used to share practical tips on project success beyond just the theory. And then somebody said, Karthik sir, why not do this as a book? So my wife, Sri Priya Narayanasamy, is actually the co-author of the book. She's also been a project manager for a long time. Now, we wanted this to be a real solutions book. So what we did was we researched the top 20 reasons why projects fail. We used a poll of polls approach, right? We looked at some 40 existing research studies into project failure. We took what are the factors they were listing, and then we collated them into an Excel sheet with weightages, right? Let's say there is a study that talks about the top 10 reasons for project failure. We'll take each one of those factors into an Excel. The first factor, being the most important in that study, would get a weighting of 1.0. The last one would get a weighting of 0.05, right? That is 0.1, which is 1/10, right? Similarly, if it was top 20 failure factors, top one would get 1, the last one would be 0.5. And so then we collated all the weights and came up with this list of top 20 failure factors. Every one of the 52 chapters in the book, and that is one chapter for every week of the year, is a story, and I'm going to use that same approach today in our session. So there is an appendix at the end that lists the 20 failure factors, and there is a column that says these are the chapters that deal with each failure factor. Since people don't like to read long books or attention spans are short today, each one of the chapters in the book is only 3 pages long, right? It's a story of a project manager having an issue in a project, and there is a turning point, epiphany moment where the problem gets solved, right? And then rather than it be just about the author's experience, we invited 108 experts from around the world, including people like Dr. E. Sridharan, Jesse Fuel, who's an authority on Agile, right? These are people who have done 2,000 projects or more in 119 countries and 56 industries. So in each chapter, there is 2 experts who actually say, if I had this problem, how would I solve it? So it is truly a crowd sourcing knowledge kind of book. So what were the 20 failure factors? Like in the Oscars, I think the Oscars are close by. So they don't start with the winner up front, right? So the 20th factor was mismanaging conflicts. I'm not going to go into detail for each one of them. So to keep it interactive, if any of you have experienced this failure factor, you can just type in that number in the chat box, right? 18 is poor task assignments. You assign the wrong people to the wrong job. Ineffective project management methodology. Poor or missing project management skills. Many times the best developer or the best architect is made project manager, even though they may not have training or experience in project management. Poor schedule management, mismatch of skills. That is what you need for your project. You don't have those skills assigned to you. You don't have people with those skills. Ineffective risk management, not managing change properly. We'll have one of our 10 tips today dealing with that. Low levels of team morale, this also we'll deal with. By the way, when I do this session, I'm not going to talk about purely technical project management techniques. I'm also going to take in aspects of communication and leadership and morale, because those today are extremely important for project success. So low stakeholder engagement, poor or unethical leadership, poor estimation, whether it be time estimates, cost estimates, risk management, not aligning your project to organizational goals, scope creep, right? We've all met that. In fact, sometimes jokingly we say it is scope gallop, not scope creep. Poor communication, lack of senior management engagement, unrealistic expectations of stakeholders of the team, unclear requirements. And if we want to ring a bell for the highest, the number 1 rated factor, anybody wants to guess? If you want to type in the chat box, the number 1 reason for project failure. And Girish, if anybody types, you can read out to me because I'm not able to see the chat box. Any guesses on what the number 1 reason for project failure is?
Unclear scope.
Team management, unclear scope. Neither of them is the top one. Unclear requirements. I'm just able to see it briefly as it flashes on the screen. It's something bigger. It's something that should start at the beginning of the project. something you need to do. You need to pay a lot of attention at the start of the project. With that hint, can anybody get something? The number one reason for project failure globally. Okay. Give it 10 seconds if anybody wants to give one last. Yes. Unclear project charter. Shankar Hillary is fairly close, but it relates to the project charter and with drumbeats, poor or inadequate planning, right? And that picture, I think, clearly shows what can happen if we don't plan enough, right? And oftentimes it is difficult, right? Because our stakeholders are pushing us to show results, right? So we want to hit the ground running, and we often start doing stuff without, even in terms of agile, right? At the start of a sprint, we certainly need to do some amount of planning. So poor or inadequate planning is the number one reason for project failure as per what we did, right? Now, the approach I'm going to use today, in each one of the tips, we'll talk about what the situation is, what's going on in the project, right? What is the negative impact of that situation? How is it affecting our project? And finally, we'll end with a resolution, which is we are talking about how can we fix that particular issue in the project, which will be the technique itself. So this is something you can even use as a presentation technique, because oftentimes if you mention the situation, the negative impact, people are likely to relate with it and they feel part of it. And then the resolution, rather than giving it straight away, they understand it far better. So we move on to the very first tip. And you see an underlined word here. All through my presentation, I will have some small tips of underline or bold and things like that. Make a note of it, because together there will be a final question where some of these tips will together form. So this is my nice way of making sure that you are paying attention all throughout. So the first tip is called serve as CEO. So this is a case study of an important project in a multi-vendor PMO, right? Stakeholders were pulling in various directions. Obviously, different people have, finance would want margin optimization, marketing will want customer delight, and oftentimes these all don't merge, right? Now, when team members were working in silos in various projects, obviously there were conflicts and delays in the project and program. Now, this was the situation, right? When this happens, project failure rates are definitely likely to rise, right? Conflicts delay things, and our schedule gets affected. So what is it that could happen, right? When team members pull in different directions, there are arguments. There is a very famous saying, you can Google it, lack of trust doubles the cost of doing business, right? I was a little sad when the CSK lost their first match of the IPL yesterday. I'm a big CSK fan. But there were a lot of times, you can understand it's a new team, there are new players, and a lot of times there were question marks about running between the wickets. And why was that happening? Right? The two partners don't trust with each other. They say that if there are two openers or two players who batsmen who've been playing together for a long time, they don't even have to call one or two, right? One look at the other person's face and they know that this could happen. Similarly, if there is good trust among the team members, things can be much, much easier. So as you can see, I've given you the situation and impact. Now the resolution is, what is it that you can do? Now, the headline clearly tells you, right? When we say serve as CEO, what we mentioned here, and this basically is the first chapter in our book, we're saying that in your mindset, you should assume and you should act as the CEO of your project. Now, what does the CEO of a large corporate do, right? They, along with the board of directors, they define the vision of the entire organization, right? And they make sure all down, right, through town halls, through emails, through recorded discussions, right? They communicate the big picture of what that project, what the company is going to do. Similarly, on your project, come out with some aspirational saying. You can say, this is a new client. They're going to do so well that this client will not even think of going to any other vendor, right? So once again, I'll give you an example. We did an ITIL project for Pfizer way back in 2009, right? It was a very new project. There was a lot of things that were not clear. The team was a new team, but what the aspirational part I did was I came up with something called A-star results, right? The Maruti A-star had just then been released. There were a lot of advertising going on. So I said A-star results on this project, right? In every bit of work we do, we will do such a good thing that our stakeholders and our customers, all of those people will give us A-star, right? So we keep making sure that message is done. It's not enough to mention it once and let it go. People have short attention spans. So over a period of time, you have to keep mentioning that this is the big picture of the project. I'm not talking about technical scope or all of that. When we do this, it helps the team pull together, right? And rather than what we saw earlier, where we were seeing a tug of war, right? People are pulling in different directions. Rather than this, we now have a situation where, like in a perfect boat race, everybody is turning in perfect unison, right? So that was our first tip, and I'll give you some examples. I gave you the example of A-Star. I would sometimes go a step further. For example, companies have logos and taglines. So sometimes I make it actually a contest within the team. I'll get typically most people have many people have good design skills in the project, and I make it a contest and ask somebody to come up with a project logo, which we share internally. We use in our project meetings. We'll have this logo, and the tagline is missing. A-star results in everything. So that was the tagline of that project, right? Similarly, we were doing a security project, and there we said safe as a fort, right? All of you have heard of Fort Knox in the US, KNOX, right? Where all the US's gold reserves are stored. So it's supposed to be one of the most secure forts in the world. So here we said safe as Fort Knox, right? So this gives you a picture of what the CEO normally does. We do these kinds of things in our real projects. So we will now start with our interaction, right? This is how around 2 people for each of the tips, right? You have a chance to ask a question or share your experience. Now, how do you do it? You type sharing in the chat window. You can either share an experience, not more than 45 seconds to a minute, max a minute. And on a first come, first served basis, Girish and Sunil will look at who typed that sharing first, and they'll unmute that person. That person will share, and then the second person. So whoever has typed sharing first, on this particular tip, either your perspective on the tip, or if you have a question on this particular technique, we can do that. So do we have any names yet, Sunil or Girishji?
No, not yet.
Okay. So we'll wait 30 seconds in the interest of time. It could be either your perspective on this tip, whether you've used it, or if you have a question on this technique, that is also something you can ask. So we'll give it 30 seconds. If there is nobody, we will just move on to the next step. You can ask a question towards the end. We're going to use the final Q&A to be a little short because we are sharing 10 tips, but and we will be doing interactions after every tip. So anybody so far? Okay. So let's basically keep moving on. Maybe we're getting warmed up, and your brains have been a little massaged with the crossword clue. So as we move along, I think we will get more interactive. So moving on to the second one, right? I'm talking about upgrading senior management engagement. Once again, you see an underline somewhere there, and that's a tip for you to pay attention. So this was a high visibility infrastructure project for a major US client. I spent 7 years in the US between 97 and 2004, doing a lot of projects for clients in a number of different industries. So on this infrastructure project, right, the major business sponsor was the CEO himself. It was that important a project, right? Now, the CEO was so busy with so many other projects that the team was not getting project decisions quickly enough. And when decisions are delayed, important decisions, obviously you don't go to the CEO with every question. But here, since those decisions were not getting made, there were severe schedule issues. obviously what would happen when this kind of situation, the client was getting upset. And I don't know whether you've seen this in most sports, right? A team that keeps getting beaten up, a team that keeps getting galleys from the customer, morale obviously gets affected, and it was going into actually a vicious cycle. Things were getting more and more bad. This was the situation, right? What was the impact, right? And why was this happening? Right? As you know, whether it is a VP, whether it's your senior manager, whoever is the senior stakeholder on your project, they have limited bandwidth, right? You may be managing your project, but they may be managing several different projects, right? Their focus is on achieving strategic goals. Link back to the first step, right? Serve as CEO. What is the CEO saying? The CEO is saying, this year, our goal of our organization is geographical expansion. Another company, they may say, our stock price is getting hammered. This year, we'll focus on margin optimization, so we show bottom line results. By the way, I'd like to ask you a question. You can type in the chat box. How many of you read your company's annual report? Or how many of you read strategic documents that are made public? Or news announcements about your company? Right? Anyone does that? If you do, type in the chat box. Mayur says no. Anyone else who actually does that? And I would not argue with you on that, primarily because Arun Kumar says he does. I'm sorry, I'm not able to read out all names since I'm in presentation mode. I just have this small blue box coming up when somebody types. I'm paying attention, but if I miss out somebody's name, I apologize. But why is this? Raghuveer once again says he does. So why is this important? If your project, right? Remember, we had a failure factor, non-alignment to organization goals. If margin optimization is the goal of the company for that year, if your project is spending like crazy and running into losses, may not be your fault, right? If that is happening, now your senior manager may be facing galleys from the vice president or the CEO, and they say, look, this is our goal this year, and your project is going the opposite direction, right? So this alignment is important. How do you align in order to get from point A to point B, right? Let's say you're using Google Maps. How can Google Maps point out a route for you unless you specify the destination, right? So what your destination will be, you will understand through what your organizational strategy is. I'm not saying you'll be able to do this in every step. You may think I'm just a project manager. How can I impact organizational policy? But I'm sure all of you have heard the story of this man. Once the tide had retreated in a beach, he was taking out these small sea fish that had caught in the sand, and he was throwing them back into the water so they could survive. And somebody laughed at him and said, what are you doing? There are thousands and thousands of these fish who have been stranded on the beach. Are you going to be able to save all of them? So he just takes one more fish, throws it back into the water, and says that, well, I made a difference for this one. I saved this life. I may not be able to save all of those lives. So like they say, little drops of water make the mighty ocean. Similarly, every project, whatever it contributes, right, can make a huge difference. And when you highlight to your bosses, right, that your project is actually contributing strategically, for example, margin optimization, you can take small methods, you can take ideas from the team on how we can reduce some costs. I don't mean cost cutting. There's a difference between cost cutting and cost reduction, right? So we talk about there's a table and you want to reduce the cost. One way would be to cut the corners, right? Cutting corners will affect quality. It will make the table look bad, right? At the same time, you can look at alternative materials. You can look at a better vendor and good pricing for the same quality, right? In terms of geographies, you may hear your client at a meeting say, hey, what is happening in our African project? Now you understand that this client is doing projects in Africa. Now you could go to your marketing team and say, look, our client seems to be doing stuff in Africa. Why don't we pitch to them that we can do this? Right? You may think this is not the job of a project manager, right? But when you make alignments like this, right, some other ways, One thing I want you to be careful, if you involve the boss in everything, copy them in every email, you invite them to every meeting, then they're going to say, why are you there as a project manager? You're there to handle things, only escalate and bring things to me when I require, right? So you can highlight alignments once in a way. You can say the VP, for example, you can say, Krishna, you're an expert in this topic. Project is in that area. Can you address our staff for 15 minutes at one of our meetings? Right? Your expertise will be valuable to us. When you make your boss look good, and I'm not saying flattery or things like that, but when you highlight that your project is moving in the corporate direction, then he'll be able to tell his boss, right? Look, these projects under me are doing that, right? Once you give them some visibility by sharing their expertise, right? They're likely to be more interested in your project. You'll get decisions quicker. You may not lose key personnel, right? So don't think I'm going 30,000 feet high. I've seen this practically work in projects, right? So that was tip number 2. And once again, if you'd like to share your experience, maybe the people who said that they actually read the annual report, one of you can share anything that you found in the annual report that you were able to use in your project. Right? Once again, the first 2 people, it's like the fastest fingers. The first few people who type that, because I'd like this session to be very interactive. Then Girish will give you a chance to he'll unmute you and give you a chance to share. And if you have a question on this, if you don't agree with the tip also, I'm perfectly fine. So Raghuveer would like to share. So he says unmute. So Sunilji, if we can unmute Raghuveer and get him to share. So Raghuveer, the only request at all participants is, since we are running on a tight schedule, keep it to
Unmute then.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Raghuveer. Are you on mute? Raghuveer? Go ahead. Maybe he's having some technical problems. And anyone else, Girishti? We can go to the second.
Am I audible now?
Yes, go ahead. Go ahead, Raghuveer.
Yeah. So, as I mentioned to you earlier, yes, I go through the annual reports, but my focus would be mostly to see how we do in the projects, like, for example, what is the share value and all that, and how I am contributing. I am into smart city projects, which is approximately 20% of the domain of my company. And
Awesome.
I have got a few projects by which I think some improvement has happened in the stock exchange. We discussed a few points here, and you are very right. See, basically, what happens is when it is a smart city, I am totally responsible. Currently, we have a big project where I am a part of a module. Like, there are 20 modules, and I am part of 3, 4 modules. So now, again, there's a clashes, like there is somebody else who is owning the project, and I'm a part of it. And I have to, go very, you can say, proper manner so that the project is not hampered because of my contribution to that, which is over surpassing the person who is actually the project manager. So yes, the things what you mentioned are very, very clear, and I'm sure that with the going of this session, we will be able to understand it much more better. Thank you, Karthik ji.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Raghuveer. Anyone else would like to share? Girishji, can anyone else type sharing or unmute?
Miss Biju Nair is saying yes only. I don't
Okay,
know.
let's unmute Biju and ask him to ask a question or share. All yours, Biju.
Good morning, Karthik. Am I
Good
audible?
morning. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, Karthik. So I'm handling the project that is basically a legacy system and it is due for an upgrade for quite some time. And this COVID protocols and everything that was coming in, I just saw the annual report where there was a stress on going for the technology and enablement as such. And I took that as an opportunity to discuss with my CEO, and now I'm so happy that at least he has approved the upgradation of my project as such. So that is how I was able to correlate and align my software to that of the company's vision and value.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. Now, some of you may think that this is too high level for me. I'm only at a project level, but let me tell you something. There's a famous book I read called Rules of Work by an author called Richard Templar. He has written several beautiful books, Rules of Money, Rules of Parenting, and things like that. And that is where I got the inspiration for the format of the book. Each of the chapters, there are 100 chapters, each chapter is only 2 pages long. And they share with you something about something that will be useful and can immediately be used. For example, they say if you want to get promoted in your workspace, you have to look like, walk like, talk like, and wear clothes like your boss, right? Let me expand on that, right? It doesn't mean if you have a female boss, you wear female clothes. It's just mentioning it, or your boss wears bright pink to the office and you wear bright pink, or you copy them. The larger principle here is for HR, for your management to think that you can be promoted, they need to see you thinking like you're already in that position, right? So when you do stuff like this, oftentimes we take several decisions which are good for our project, not bad for the organization, right? Because we also want to be profitable in our project. We don't want to be dinged in our annual appraisals based on issues in the project. But if we keep taking decisions that are good for our project but not good for our company, they're going to think this person is like a horse with blinkers. This project manager cannot think beyond the project, right? And then they're going to think, how can I promote them? If I give them a promotion, can they think bigger, right? So like Raghuveer and Viju shared, right? If you're able to do some of these things, understand your company's direction, think like what your boss would think, right? I'm not saying you'll be right in every occasion. And that's about this step. When you do that, your chances of promotion, your chances of success in your project, and your project itself getting decisions because they see you are in step with the overall company. So very, very important, though it is not technical. So let's move on to technique number 3. So I'm sorry that we are able to do only 2 people at a time because we don't have much time. Towards the end, if we have a little bit extra time, we're doing reasonably well on time. I think we're around 3 minutes behind. But towards the end, what we will do is we'll try to open it up to more people. Now, in this particular chapter in my book, there is a young lady project manager who's getting into an Uber cab on her way to work. Right? Even if she gets into the cab, she's on the phone with her dad. Right? And she tells her dad, my customers are extremely, extremely rude to me. I spend a lot of time on communicating with them, but they're saying you're not giving us the information that we need. Right? The clients are unhappy. And this is a difficult situation because she's putting in a lot of time on communication. But all that she does, they're still unhappy, right? She tells her dad, I just don't know what to do. Now, the cab driver is actually listening to her. He's a fairly senior man, right? And he basically says, young lady, I'm sorry, I couldn't help overhear what you were saying. And she says, before I retired, I was a project manager too. And she's wondering, project manager, is he forced to drive a cab? Is this how I will end up in my life? End up driving a cab if I'm a project manager? So he sees the look of puzzlement in her face through the mirror. And he says, don't worry, I did very well as a project manager. I'm financially well off. He said, the doctor said, if I keep sitting at home and watching TV and serials, my mind will go. It is not good for me. So generally, they say as we grow older, we start reading new things. We learn a new language. We learn music. Then the neurons in the cell keep getting regenerating, and we don't suffer problems like Alzheimer's and dementia and things that people who are not active won't do. Right? So he says, rather than sit at home, I don't do it for the money. Just 3 hours a day, I drive a cab for me to get an idea of what's going on in the world, meeting new people, and sharing my experience with them. So he says, if you are interested, we can have a conversation later on. I can share my experience on how I was able to solve this kind of a problem. He said, I too had this kind of a problem, and I was able to solve it. Right? Now, what is the issue, right? Normally, most large organizations have a communication template, right? They say this is how we'll communicate to the customer. This is what we can communicate. This is what we can't, right? Now, there may be several things in those templates, bits of information that are not useful to the stakeholder at all in that particular project, the customer, right? But they get that info because it is there in the template. And because we only have time to do what is in the template, we are not able to give them some other information they may really need. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that we give information which is against company policy, right? There may be small bits which the company policy doesn't say you can't do, right? But because this is the template, and that is why I'm giving this example of this little boy wearing his father's shirt, right? It is loose fitting, it doesn't fit him, the tie goes down to his thigh. Oftentimes, this is what we do with our customers. Our communication template, even if it doesn't fit the customer needs, right? We normally use that same template, right? Obviously, there is conflict and dissatisfaction, as is the case with the lady, right? Once again, delays affecting project failure. So what's the solution? I'm not talking about this custom fit clothes. I know nowadays that tailoring a suit can cost 25,000 rupees if you go to the top bespoke tailor. That's not what I'm talking about. At the start of the project, right? That is why when we started with this technique, we said who, what, when, why, and how. Right? This is also something that's we've read about in the PMBOK when we did our PMP, but we don't necessarily follow it, right? We ask what is the information you need, where is it needed, who needs the information, why is it needed, what frequency, right? We spend a little bit of time, and this goes back to the number one reason for project failure on inadequate or poor planning, right? If we spend the time doing this amount of planning, obviously just as with scope, right? Customers will ask for a huge list and we may not be able to do all that, right? But then we can negotiate with them. We can say that out of these, like with Agile, Moscow, right? Must have, should have, could have, won't have. We can say of this huge list that you've provided, if I have to do everything, I'll not have time to execute the project. But which of these is most important to you, even if it is not in the communication template. And then what happens is we are coming up with a more customized kind of planning. Of course, in terms of Agile, right, we basically have a product owner. We are much more in tune with the customer and we are able to do that, right? But even in Agile projects, right, even in Scrum, we can actually spend a little bit of time before the first sprint and then adjust as we move along. As we move along, now this was a plan. Plans don't always work, right? Once in a few months, once probably at the retrospective, we can say, is this communication that we decided on, not the original template, is this working? Should we make minor changes, right? And then the customer gets what they're asking for more, and this is likely to work far, far better. So if anybody has any clarifications, any questions, or if you'd like to share some of this that you have done on our project, ideally we'd like to have new people. But if nobody else is doing it, Raghuveer and Biju can share also. So let's try so fastest finger first. Who types sharing or unmute first? Girish and Sunil will help you out, unmute you, and you can share your perspective. And I'm not saying this will work in every single situation. If you think it may not work, what challenge you may face, you're perfectly fine sharing that too, because all of us have experiences and whatever you share will be useful for everyone. Anyone would like to share? In case you have done this, in case you have faced the problem, or if you have a question on this particular technique, I'll give it another 30 seconds to see whether anyone wants to participate, else we'll move. And if you have a question on this and we have a time at the end, I'll be happy to answer it. So another 10 seconds. Anyone so far, Girishi?
No one, sir.
Okay, so let's move on to number 4, right? Have you felt this? On a project, there is so much to do, yet there is so little time. Have you felt that? If you can just type a yes. If you have this dilemma, you can type a yes. Hopefully, if I have not put people to sleep yet, I'm trying to engage. I'm trying to use humor. I'm trying to use visuals. If I've not put people to sleep, Raghuveer says yes. Is this something that you felt on your project? Yes, it's just three keys to type, right? And a carriage return. Rajendra Bhatt says yes. Amod Shalkar says yes. So Shika Singh yes, says yes. So says Arun Kumar, Praveen. So a lot of people typing yes. Anybody wants to say no? If any of you say no, I will actually come. I'll take a flight and come to you and spend a day with you and pay money to you to understand how you have reached this exalted position. I'm not joking, but today, like we said, right, clients, it's the art of prioritizing. Is it what you type? The window flashed and went. So, right. So what happens is, and this is another very important technique, right? All of us have heard of the 80-20 rule of the Pareto principle. Many times we've only heard it as a theoretical thing on our PMI exam in terms of quality, right? When you have so much to do and such little time, right? One of the very key leadership aspects of a project manager is to delegate. Oftentimes, I myself had a lot of this problem, right? If somebody is not carrying out some bit of work, I'll try and sit and work on it myself. I'll work 20 hours a day because I want to get it done. But you're actually spoiling your team members. You're not allowing them to grow, right? If we want perfection in as part of my Leadership Institute masterclass, one of my coaches told me, Karthik, a lot of people, the feedback they give you is that you're too much of a perfectionist, right? And she said, if you get to 80%, which is what everybody requires in the industry today, if you can get to 80% perfection in 4 hours, if you want to get to 100%, it will take you another 4 hours. Going from 80 to 100 is going to take another 4 hours. She said, when people are not expecting it, why is it that you do? And she said, once again, if you do that, if you expect every one of your employees to be 100% perfect, then you will stop delegating because you feel they cannot do that level of perfection, right? So I found this extremely useful, right? The 20% of aspects on a project, and I'm going to ask you examples of what you think could be 20%. 20% having an 80% impact, right? Some examples of tasks or areas in your project which will be 20%, but they'll have an 80% impact. So you can type it out in the chat box if you want, and we can, and Girishji can read it out. But if you do this, you basically can delegate the remaining, right? It's not that those things are not important, but you can delegate the remaining aspects. You still keep a close watch, but your focus for the day is those things, right? Anything coming up in the chat, some tasks, some activities, some areas in your project that may constitute only 20% of the work, but they could have an 80% impact on your project. We'll give it another 30 seconds for you to type it out. It's not high-end theory. You need not have read my book in order to just think of what things you were able to focus on, right? Rajendra Bhatt says understanding team member skills, so on. Before that thing went, can you read that, Girishji? Manage resources 80%, okay, 20%, execution 80%. So I'm looking for something a little bit more granular, critical decisions related to matters. Ravi says that. Thank you, Ravi. Anyone else? So if you want to think of it a little bit more in detail. Okay, so I'll give it another 10 seconds to see whether anyone else is typing something. Shika says delivering reports to the client. So I will give you some examples. Abbas says right resources deployed on the project. Planning to implementation says Arun. So in this, I'm talking about we may have 50 stakeholders, right? 80-20 is just a rule of thumb, right? It could be 30-70, right? Or it could be 10-90, right? The stakeholders who can really have a big impact on a project. And oftentimes, when we read the PMBOK and we spoke about stakeholder management, right? We talk about the power impact grid, right? What is the and we talk about the interest impact grid, right? So the top right-hand corner, those are the one fourth or probably handful of stakeholders, right? So what you do is you don't ignore other stakeholders, but what you do is Raghuveer says it's true in all projects. I completely understand. So this is a general trip for all projects, right? So you look at that one fourth, right, in terms of stakeholders. Once again, we have known in risk management, right? We don't try and handle every single risk, even among the shortlisted set of risks that we are going to manage. You as project manager look at the critical risks, right? Once again, in terms of time and cost, right? When we are coming up with estimates, right? We saw that estimation is one of the biggest reasons for project failure, right? Can we do detailed estimation for every single time and cost, for every single task or activity? Maybe not necessarily. We will run out of bandwidth, right? Instead, we talk about those activities which are really critical. And for those activities, we then say that for these, we will spend more time. Like we can use examples like purchase program. So we can do detailed spreadsheets. We can look at estimates from previous projects. We can have a team member meeting, right? So using this kind of a thing, our focus is on what can have the biggest impact, right?
Jacob sir ने reply किया देखो उसमें wonderful thanks करके.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. Once again, in terms of the schedule, right, the critical path,
Jacob sir
right?
journalist है.
So the critical path is an area where it's a small.
वो नहीं attendees जो है वो नहीं कर पा रहे.
So Girishi, we are hearing your voice as you speak to Jacob sir.
Okay.
So once again, the critical path, we may think some things are important, right? Mathematically, once again, if you have not read the book Critical Chain by Eliyahu Goldratt, it will change the complete way you think about project management. So I highly suggest you read that book, Critical Path and Critical Chain Activities. So those are things, when you focus on this, right, you will no longer say there is so much to do, there is so little time, because now you have reduced. I agree that you can't completely follow this because there may be boss calls you suddenly. You have to take that call. There's a urgent situation in the project and escalation. So those are things which will drag you away. But at least 2/3 of the time, if you focus on what you're going to focus on, another very famous book I read is called Eat the Frog, and it is not a book on Chinese food delicacies, right? Search for it. This book says that even at the start of a day, right, what we usually used to doing, we have a list of to-dos on the project for that day. In the morning, the impression is that I will start doing the things that are easiest first. Maybe there are 10 things that I have to do today. 3 are very difficult, time consuming, right? So I'll say if I can knock out 7 of those things in the morning or by lunch, then those 3 things are much easier, right? It's a common approach. So instead, I think Brian Tracy is the author of the book. So what Brian says is that when you start on those easy activities, one, you're tiring yourself. If any complication happens in those most difficult activities, you're doing it at the end of the day when at the latter half of the day. One of those easy activities may take more time. So you finish the simple things, but you didn't do the most important stuff of the day. So since eating a frog is difficult, so he says, do the difficult things first, right? You're fresh in the morning. Even if some complication develops on those difficult activities, even if it takes you till the end of the day, there are some of those easy things you could ask others to do. As project manager, as scrum master, important decisions, things like that, right? You're better off doing first things in the day. It is counterintuitive because we want to do the simple things first, right? And get that confidence. We talk about low-hanging fruit, right? What he says, focus on the bigger activities first in the day and you'll be more on the way to success. So anyone wants to share their experience in terms of this 80-20 or some prioritization you did? Anything you'd like to share here? Jacob G, in fact, Jacob was one of the contributors or one of the expert insights to our book, Jacob Zakaria. So, Jacob, anything on this tip that you'd like to share? I'd like to hear your voice.
Thank you. Actually, we are all here to listen to you, not to me.
No. It need not be only on this step, Jacob. Any of these things, I know you work in senior positions, even if it is a question of serve the CEO or engaging senior management. Any of
I will be there a little later. I'll be there definitely,
okay,
Karthik.
okay,
For
sure.
sure.
Thank you. Girishi, anyone else who wants to share?
Yeah, I'm Raghuveer here. Can I share?
Yeah, please.
Yeah. So my observation is that, for me, the last part, that is the closure part in my project, because we have to take sign-offs from government organizations and all that, is actually 20%, but my efforts from start of the project to end is 80% on this closure part, because that is where the project closes and we get an, go live certificate or work completion certificate. So that is what I wanted to share is between what is that Pareto principle for me. Last part, 20% is very, very critical. 80% of my efforts goes in that. Thank you.
Awesome. That's a great perspective. In fact, a lot of times, that's actually the last chapter in my book is about effective lessons learned, documentation and sessions. Thanks for mentioning that, because oftentimes at the end of the project, we are rushing towards another project. We've already started work on another project just to get a tick mark on the project audit, right? I know in construction it is much more serious. In a lot of times in IT, we don't, smaller organizations, we don't give the importance for a lessons learned session, the amount it needs, but it is vital for future projects. It is, so it is extremely important. So thanks for mentioning that. Anyone else, Girishji? I saw somebody try to ask a question. So if Girishji can read that out, I think it was a fairly long question. Before I could read it, it went away. Maybe Girishji, either you can unmute that person who asked the long question, or you can just read out what that question was.
So the first question from Ravi is that prioritize the design runway elements which were difficult to get and evaluate so that work can progress.
Super. Anyone
So
else asked a question?
how to,
Mr.
one more
Abdul.
question from Abdul. How to handle the situations where there is a conflict and what is the more impactive between teams within a project?
Yeah, so that is a question. If you could just write down, Girishji, it's not specific to this step. I'll definitely ask that question, answer that question as the first question to be answered towards the end of the session. Right? Conflict management is also a chapter in our book. In fact, the chapter is named War and Peace, as in the famous Leo Tolstoy book. But we will park that question, Girishi, and we'll definitely handle it at the end.
Karthik, one quick information. People can enter their chat questions in everyone, not in a panelist. The reason is that so everyone can read the question rather than just the panelist. So Karthik, just look at the everyone rather than to the panelist so that you will get more questions.
So excellent point, Jacob Ji. It is just that since I'm on full screen mode on my PowerPoint, I'm not able to see that panel, which is why I'm requesting Girish to read out for me. The comments that are coming, I just see a small blue boxes as always on the top right of my screen. So I'm not able to read all of it together, but not for everyone. Those of you who are typing questions, type it in the chat, not just just to the panelists, because I'm not able to access that and see it as I present. So that actually brought us to the end of technique 4. So we are around 1 hour into our session. So what we can do is we can take a 15-minute bio or breakfast or whatever break it is, brunch break, because it's now 11 p.m. And we can restart at 11:15. Then we'll start 11:15 sharp, and we'll start with a poll as soon as you come back.
A quick announcement before we go into the break, into the bio break, is that there are about 70 participants here today. We like to mention that we have our certification training in PMP in the month of April, and that is the third week of April. Everything's available on the website, so please check that. And more important, we also have a 2-day program, an MS Project 2019 version that is also on the in the month of April on 23rd. You can check it on the website. There are people from other than the Mumbai chapter and especially from outside India who are also attending this program today. Welcome to all of you, and most welcome to attend any of our training programs, but not PMP, because PMP under the ATP rules and regulations is only available for people in India. But the MS project, you can definitely do it. So thank you. We take a break right now, Girish and
Sir,
Karthik.
actually, Priya Patra madam wants to make a small announcement. So, over to Priya madam.
Please do that.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Girish and Karthik. Wonderful session. And Jacob, yes, thanks for saying that we see many people from outside India joining in. I see Dr. Mazin Gadir also here from the PMI UAE chapter. Thank you, Dr. Gadir, for joining in. And Girish, if you can give me the sharing rights, I would like to announce our next PMI chapter exchange event. And yeah, just give me a second. Let me try to share my screen. Okay, what am I sharing? Yes. Yes, so we are back again. This is our season 3. And this time in April, we are going to discuss a very, very important trend. And it is the Great Resignation. So anyone knows what this Great Resignation is all about? You can type on the chat window. I'm taking cues from Karthik, trying to make this interactive again. And if you know, please do type here on the chat window. And I'll wait for 1 second because I don't have much time. Girish will not give me enough time, more time than 5 minutes to speak about it. I don't see any chat. Girish, do you see anything? Any answers? Yes, employees are resigning left, right, and center. Resigned from one organization. Yes, I am getting lots of answers. This is an economic trend. Yes, that just mean leaving the project to run as it is. Yeah. So this is an economic trend. We started in late 2021 and people are just living in en masse. And this is a word that was coined by Anthony Coles. He's an associate professor in A&M University in Texas. And this has taken the world by storm. It's not only in the US, in India, in my current organization, I see many senior folks also leaving. Whereas earlier we used to see like, middle level people like senior software engineers, etc. leaving. Now I see even senior managers leaving the organization. Now, why is it happening? This is what we are going to discuss. Is it time to rethink the way we are managing our projects? So we have project managers from across the globe coming in and discussing this very great topic, the Great Resignation. So we have Alexander, who is from Latin America, Peru. We have Christopher, who is from North America. We have Martina from Sweden, Europe. And we have Tamilo from Africa. And it will be moderated by Shanaka De Silva, our representative from Asia. And Girish, if you can just paste the registration link, I encourage everyone to come and join, share your views, learn from this global panel experts, and understand how we can better lead our projects and ride this wave of the Great Resignation. And our guest speaker is Prasanna Sampath Kumar. He is the region mentor of our South Asia. We have invited him to kickstart this event. And so I hope to see each one of you there to share your views so that we can all ride this wave of Great Resignation. So thank you, Girishji. I'm done.
Excellent topic, Priya. I will be sure to register and attend too.
Thank you, Karthik. We hope to see you there. Yes, Girishji, that is all from my side. I will stop sharing my screen now.
Okay, madam. Thank you. So, we will take a small break and we'll be back at 11:15.
Hi, Girish, I'm audible.
That you
Yes,
are
sir.
audible.
I'm sharing, so I'll go to the next slide. So, Girish, at this point, we can actually, as soon as people come back, we can launch our next poll.
Okay, okay.
So we'll start with that interaction as we move on. So those of you who are back, welcome back. We are launching. Girishi, so I should have actually run this poll a little earlier, but it is fine. We'll run this poll as well as the second one in quick
Acha, okay.
succession.
Sure,
So
sure.
we'll have people respond. So those of you who are back, I request you to just answer this poll question. Uh, like Jacob Zakaria said, there are a lot of, we have around 70 people here. Let's have at least 40 people answer this project. So what is the typical kind of project that you do? I've submitted my vote too. Because for me, when I do a session, interaction is very, very important because based on the results of the poll, I'll tailor the next 6 steps, how much I talk about the various methodologies. A lot of the techniques that I'm covering are applicable to all kinds of projects. That's one of the ways we wrote the book. But if I get an understanding what kind of projects you primarily do, that will be very, very useful to me to tailor this step.
So I'm closing the poll.
Sure. So if you could just read the results, Girishi,
Yeah.
I'm able to see it. So Agile, traditional waterfall is, I'm not able to see the percentage. Just expanding it. Yeah. 15% is traditional waterfall. I think 27%. Actually, we have to double all of this because 49% was no answer. So out of the people who have spoken, around 30% is traditional waterfall. 6% is iterative. I'm doubling because only 50% of people answered. So hybrid is around 54%. So we're talking about the transition is happening and there is still around half the projects are hybrid. Pure agile is around 12% and 30% is traditional and waterfall. Fine. So let's also launch the next poll, Girishi, because this is directly in tune with the technique that we're going to talk about.
So launch.
What is the importance of managing cultural diversity in projects? So you have the actual question up on the screen. We shortened it a little bit for the viewpoint of readability in the poll. In your opinion, what's the importance of proactively managing cultural diversity in your projects? So we'll give it around 30 seconds to maximum a minute. So it goes from very low to very high, and everybody has different opinions. So here we are talking about your particular opinion. I guess, Girishi, we can close the poll.
Okay.
Going to look at the results. So once again, we can double. I think hardly anybody says very low or low. Medium, it says 6, which we can extrapolate to around 13%. High and very high. So if we actually add up these things here, 50, I think almost 95% of the people who answered actually say it is basically high or very high or medium. So this technique, actually, we're going to talk about this technique in terms of culture on our projects, right? So I was actually part of this particular conference call. I was running this conference call, which is a global project across 5 different countries. So it was India, the US, we had a site in Sandwich in England, we had a site in Nagoya in Japan, and a few other sites. So it was 5 different countries, around 12 different sites, right? And I call this a conference call from hell, as you can see in that image there, because Brian from New York, soon into the call, started shouting at one of the team members from Chennai. And this boy, Mukund, had just completed college and he was a fresher on this project. Obviously, he probably made some mistake, and even his English skills were not the highest. So when Brian started using a lot of very abusive language, I could see that boy almost had tears in his eyes, right? So it was evil, right? Little bit, I was myself shocked, right? And I quickly switched it on to a different topic. And at the end of it, I see Suresh is actually weeping in the cafeteria, right? So he's never had even his parents or his teachers shout at him like this before. And since he was not very familiar with English, to have people go like this was really, really affecting to him, right? I had to cajole him. Then me myself, having worked in the US and with clients from the US, specifically New York, I do understand that they're very, very frank in their approach. They're not bothered about using diplomatic language. Now, I'm not saying every New Yorker is like that, but it's a general trend, right? So I explained that to Suresh. I said, Neville didn't necessarily mean to say this, but anyway, what he said was wrong. I explained it to Neville, and then Neville sent actually a written apology, which was quite a big stretch for him because I had to work on him a lot. Right? As you know, projects have people from a variety of different areas, different places in the world. We have variety of different ages, right? You have millennials, you have Gen Z, all the way up to you also have people who are close to retirement age. You have people who speak different languages. They come with different sets of ethical values, and in terms of different sexual orientations, right? And the rainbow movement is gaining a lot of momentum all through the world. Now, if you as project manager think people will just gel well, that everything will go on fine, right? You're in for a rude shock. Unless you proactively manage some of these things, it could have serious impacts on your project. And there are a lot of studies that actually show that if managed well, diversity can actually be a strong point and an asset to your project. In fact, there are research studies, a research study done on organizations in the US, right, where it said that companies where the board of directors or senior management included at least 2 or 3 women, right, the company's profitability, share price, bottom line was far, far superior because there was different ideas are discussed, and that is better than the kind of group think or just people agreeing, nodding their heads at everything, right? So in doing a session at, I think it was at Chicago, in presenting at Chicago in 2017, based on my experience, I came up with a 6-step leadership process. At the end of this session, those of you who'd like more details on it, do drop me a message on LinkedIn. I'll share my LinkedIn profile, and I'll be able to send you a little bit more detail, probably even the deck of that session, an entire 45-minute session that spoke about cultural diversity, right? So you first look at a mix of cultural traits in your team. You document those traits. You look at, just like we said, the 80-20 rule, you look at those traits that could actually damage the project or help your project, right? And you handle those traits with sensitivity training. These are things which are very big in large organizations. You don't necessarily need to get a consultant from outside. You could run a workshop yourself and run a workshop, right? There should be a stress on ethical professional conduct. And as we move along, as we do this, as with anything else in the project, we plan, we execute, we monitor how that plan is working. And if it's not working the best, we make adjustments and we move on. So we call this a assist process, and I found that it actually works very well with the project managers I mentor. So anybody wants to share a cultural experience on your project, how it helped or it hurt your project? If so, type sharing or unmute in your chat window, and we can have a couple of people share their experiences or ask questions. Since we are going to the second half of it, we'll give it 30 seconds, and if nobody is typing in, we'll move on to the next step. I'd love to have people sharing their experiences on projects. I know quite a few of you would have also worked abroad, or you would have had team members from other countries. If you noticed any particular cultural trait that could help harm your project, please share. So we'll wait another 10 seconds. I'm just getting my clock on. Otherwise, we'll move on to the next step, and towards the end, if we have time, we can have that sharing. Anyone wanting to interact, Giriji, so far?
No one so far.
Okay, so we'll move on to the next tip. Please do interact, and we'll have a little bit more interaction then. If you had these ideas, you can note them down. You can share them towards the end. Now, I was looking at what happens when people go through change, right? And Thesaurus Plus has a lot of lovely images, right? Trouble, uneasiness, soreness, nuisance, distress, and so on, right? Why am I having this slide up there? As all of us know, projects bring about change, right? The very definition in the PMBOK, right? That temporary endeavor that brings about a new product, service, or result, right? Which means the very word new means your project is going to bring about change. Here I'm talking about the example of, we were doing digital transformation of the HR department for a large construction company, right? The HR head assumed that once this new system was in place, the project would reduce its power. He would become less important. And we all saw what happened in India with the bankers' unions, right? Unions in banks who opposed computerization in the 1980s. Today, I guarantee you, no bank or bank employee would be willing to work without the system, right? Everything was done manually. I know a close friend at RBI who sometimes used to spend 2-3 hours at the end of the day because 10 paisa there was a discrepancy, right? Those were the manual days, right? So Martin thinks this will reduce his power. The bank employees thought that they would lose their jobs, right? So completely untrue, but Martin starts spreading rumors saying that if this project is successful, 50% of the people in the HR department will be laid off. And when the scare happens, right? And all of us, haven't we felt it? Type yes in the chat box. What happens during the day? Let's say we take a regular route to office every day, right? And one day there is a procession or there is a road closure. We have to take a different route, and we feel very uncomfortable, right? Coke had that same experience. They came up with a new taste for Coke, and they were going to phase out the old Coke, right? You can read it. It's a famous marketing case study. You can Google it. People started rushing to restaurants to buy all the old Coke that was there. They started all kinds of movements, doing protests outside the Coke office. And then Coke had to go back and say, no, we'll introduce the new flavor as a new flavor. Original Coke will be available. And this is because people are very uncomfortable with change. Projects bring about change, and these rumors Martin was spreading were really causing an issue. Right? Like I said, change is uncomfortable. And when it comes to losing a job, right, some of your stakeholders, even your project members or your users may act unethically. They may stop sharing information with you. They may deliberately give you wrong information. They'll refuse to meet with you. Right? And if there are enough people doing this, project failure is a big possibility. So what is it that we can do? One word. If you ask me 2 words, right? Communicate openly. Right? First, you have to look at what are the positive benefits that the change will bring about in the project. Like in the bankers unions, right? They spoke about you'll lose your job. Your job will actually become a lot easier because a lot of the manual aspects will be done by computers, right? Now there will be tough questions, right? And some of the tough questions may have answers which are not which are not what your stakeholders want to hear, right? In those cases, if you tell a lie as a leader, if your credibility is lost, nobody will believe anything later, right? We've all heard of the story of the boy who cried wolf, right? The shepherd boy who cried wolf just to make sure everybody came running, right? And they would come and see there was no wolf. And finally, when there was a real wolf, nobody would come to his rescue. So if our reputation is lost in terms of telling lies, right, and being empathetic, not being empathetical, then we'll have a problem. So answer those tough questions, but sell the positive aspects, right? Be on the lookout for people who may be spreading rumors, right, or indulging in unethical behavior, right, and tackle rumors with facts. This may all sound very easy. It may sound theoretical. Once again, you can choose a few people who are actually interested in the project, you can sell those benefits. Once again, with Martin, what we did was we actually sat and spoke to him. And we said that progress on the project is small. Rather than attacking him and telling him he spread rumors, we'll say that I can understand you may feel you may lose your power, but actually you will be left to do much more important things. You can be more effective with this system. It didn't happen overnight. It took a lot of beatings. But at the end of it, Martin actually became a project champion. And we were able to turn the project around and make it successful. So this is the actual story in this chapter in the book about how change is difficult for people and be proactive in making it work. So anyone wants to share their experience or ask any question on this broad tip, we'll give it 30 seconds. 30 seconds for you to respond saying that you'd like to share. Not 30 seconds only to share. If I had all your home addresses, I'd probably order a coffee for all of you through Swiggy. So I can get a little bit more interaction. Can we have at least one person to share on this?
Hello, I'd like to share. Raghuveer Kamath here.
Go ahead, Raghuveer.
Yeah. So I had been into a similar dilemma when I had taken over a project which was basically forced on me by the earlier project manager not able to run it properly. So I was it was at the stage of 60% of completion, and it was very difficult to know what is the current state and what went wrong and all that. And also the team members who are, it is a inter team members, like we have a technical group, then we have a project group and all that, So I was finding it a bit of a dilemma. However, there was some team member were mentioning you are now leading a sinking boat and all that. So they tried to make me more scary. But of course, due to my experience and my exposure to projects, I took a similar stance which you have already explained, like to be with the team and understand their requirement. So the technical team and project team, how to collate them together and get the project done. Today, I would like to tell you that we have completed 95% of the project, and 5% is only pending due to the sign-offs. That's it. That's
Okay.
not in our activity right now. We are trying to close that project by sign-offs. So that is what I want to share. Yeah. So it is
Excellent.
basically the communication and the team interaction and understanding what is their requirement and everything like that, and be with them. Thank you, sir.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. So these are things that are practically very, very important in projects, which is why I mentioned that uh, time tested techniques, right? And oftentimes we are so involved in the technical aspects of this project that we forget some of these other important things. So the next poll is, what is the average ratio of criticism to praise which you use every day with your project team members? You always criticize, you always praise, or is this a combination? Think of your average day and what feedback you're giving to team members. Is it positive? Is it negative? And then you choose what you have. The fourth one should actually say criticism 25% and praise 75. It is not criticism 0 and praise 100. So if you're choosing D, you should choose it if it is assuming that the text is criticism 25%, praise 75%. So D and E seem the same, but D is actually criticism 25%, praise 75%. So we'll close this poll in another 30 seconds. Let's get at least half of our attendees to vote. I voted myself. Another 10 seconds, Girishji, we can close the poll and look at the results. Yeah, we can close now. Poll has ended. Let's look at the results. So around 60% of people have answered, and that's gratifying. So criticism 70. So the highest seems to be half and half, right? Criticism 50%, praise 50%, which is around close to 50%, because 23% of 60% would translate 100% around 55, 56, right? Around 37% of people, 40% of people say it is 75% criticism and praise is 25%. And another set, maybe another 40%, 35%, you're saying that criticism is 25, praise is 75. So I'm glad to hear that. Now, we're going to play a very, very simple game, right? When I say start, you're going to take a minute. You're going to look around your room. You can look at yourself also. And be ethical. Don't write down on a sheet of paper, but make a mental note of everything that is read. It can be various shades of red. I was just searching on the web for shades of red. There's berry red, there's blush red, rose red, and all that. So it could be even the shirt you're wearing or a pen that you have. Look all around the room. Take a mental note and try to make a count. Because at the end of the minute, I'm going to ask you to close your eyes. And the person who can recall the most, once again, I'll recognize on social media. This Marine Drive name, Chandraban, I've noted down the name. So here we'll find out who can recall the most objects. So time is running now. We'll give it around 45 seconds. Because I realize most of you would have already started. So another 30 seconds, I'm looking at my clock. So we are looking for everything red. We are making a mental note of how many we can remember in terms of red. So last 10 seconds coming up. Yeah, before you will stop now, and you can type out in the chat box how many items you can recall. Let's find out who can recall the most items. Raghuvi says 7. Any number higher than that? Come on. Rajendra Bhatt says 5. Anybody else? Ravi says 9. Wow. Did you count every wall that was red in your house, Raviji? I'm just kidding. Of course, you could have also included the one red that is there on the screen in terms of the image itself. Arun Kumar says 6. Okay. So I think it's an average of 6 to 7, which is not bad. Now, just for a second, close your eyes again. Close your eyes again. Right? Now, I want you to be honest about this. How many green objects do you remember? Same room, close your eyes, don't open your eyes. I'll give you 10 seconds. Think about it. And then you can open your eyes. That number you were able to remember in your mind before you went into this. Now open your eyes. Don't look around. Just type the number of green objects you remember. Vijay Nair says 1. That is the LED of the AC. Rajendra Bhatt says 0. Chandraban says 1. Christian says 1. Arun Kumar 0. So you see that this is a lot smaller, right? Now, why did I do this simple exercise? Unfortunately, this is what we do with our teams. And I'm letting you know, I know Srihari VR says 3. right? Salil says 0, right? Unfortunately, we are so conditioned. We are facing such a challenging time that oftentimes, if we are looking for the red in our team members, if we are looking for the mistakes that we are making, if there is only one tip that you will take and practice from all of the 10 that I'm telling you today, it is this one, right? When we start looking only for the red, as we saw in the exercise, right, we will not see the green or the good things that our team members are doing. And when we do this, imagine when your boss used to keep finding fault with you, right? All of us didn't become project managers on day one. We've been resources. We've been people working on projects. We've all come across bosses. The boss, only thing he will do is he'll point out our mistakes. He'll do it with everyone. Or he may have some favorite people to whom he will praise. Right? If 90% of the time, or 100% of the time, I've had bosses where it was 100%, right? I'm only hearing criticism. Do I have any interest in actually doing good things? It is all nice to say, and I practice it in real life. The Bhagavad Gita says, do your duty and don't expect rewards, right? It is valid. I'm not saying it is wrong. And I do try and practice that, right? Don't look for praise. Don't depend on others for happiness. Try to create happiness yourself. All of those. But we are all human beings. We can't do it all the time, right? And enthusiasm is killed. Ideas are killed. Morale drops in the team, right? So when we only find mistakes, when we only see the red, we are not able to see the green. Right now, I am not saying, even I answered 75% praise, 25% criticism in this poll, right? Which is around right of what I'm doing. Now, what I do at the starting points, now it has become a habit for me. I started this around 8 years back. Since we are old habits they say die hard, right? If there's a brand of toothpaste you're using, it's very, very unlikely that you will change it. If there's a habit that happens all the time, it's difficult to change. So I used to take a notebook and I used to say every day, I'll start with 5 things. I'll start with 5 things where my team members did right. I will publicly praise them for it. Right, in Pfizer, when we did projects, we had something called a fish card, right? Card where somebody would write out appreciation, right? Dale Carnegie, in his book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, talks about how people can go without food and water for days, but they can't go without appreciation. Now, when you're specifically looking at green, if, for example, we ran that same exercise and said, make a mental note of everything green, I guarantee you it will be as much as the red, right? Yes or no? Type yes if you agree. Right? If you're looking for the green, you will definitely see green. And then we appreciate our team members. Now they'll say, okay, my ideas are appreciated. I'm not saying we don't criticize. Once again, if we need to give constructive feedback, we call them into a room. We have a personal chat with them. There again, another chapter in our book talks about the sandwich technique, where we first start with some positives, then we give the constructive feedback. I'll say, Kamal, you've been doing a great job on the project for the past few months. I was extremely impressed. Client had good words for you. The last document you produced, there are a lot of mistakes. Lots of things were missing. Are you having any issues? Is there any way I can help with you? Now, Kamal, because I started with the positive, is not going to be on the defensive, right? And then Kamal is going to say, okay, then he may come up with an issue. I may be able to have somebody help with him. Maybe he has somebody struggling at home in terms of health. Maybe he has relationship issues, right? So as a project manager, if we try to be supportive, and then I will say, once again, I will end up with a positive. I say, I have confidence with you, Kamal. I'll help you. Let's get through this tough period. I am sure your next document will be great. Let's fix this one. Right? Now, Kamal will walk out feeling 2 feet taller, right? And his contribution to the project is going to be much more. So as we make it a habit, this becomes a habit. And at a point, we may no longer need to have that notebook, right? But this is something I'm telling you, magic happens in projects, right? When I started doing this, when I mentor managers, even during PMP sessions, I used to ask them to use this technique. Magic happens. Over a period of time, the entire culture, motivation levels change, right? Any of you have a similar experience? Any of you would like to share anything on this or ask a question? We'll give it 30 seconds. I saw many of you type yes, that this will work. I saw the windows, the blue windows floating around. Anyone who would actually like to share? And the 10 seconds for you to say you'd like to share if you want to. Okay, so let's move on to this other tips. We have the last three techniques remaining. Friday the 13th, considered an example of bad luck, right? How many of you, as project managers, feel that this is one of the unluckiest professions in the world? You have demanding stakeholders, all kinds of things seem to get escalated. And Murphy's law, if something can go wrong, Raghuvi says not really. So anyone who thinks project managers are unlucky, that it's an unlucky, okay, Ravindra Paul says not unlucky, but thankless. Bichu says he agrees. Bichu says he doesn't agree. Ravi says yes. Vishal says not at all. So I'm happy to hear that. How many of you believe in luck? Type yes or no. I don't know whether Arun Kumar's no was to whether you believe in luck or not. Raghuvi says yes, probably under pressure most of the time. Vishal says yes. Yes, but for luck when under pressure, okay. Quality is a thankless job, says Shika. Right? So is there any way you can make your own luck on projects? Right? I'm not saying that project management is the most unlucky thing in the world, but because the satisfaction when you get facing all those challenges and delivering success is huge. But Ravindra Paul says in Indian context, people expect project manager also to be a tech expert. I agree with you, right? This is something I've used a lot in projects. Is there a way we can create our own luck, right? When we actually do risk management effort in projects, whether it is waterfall, whether it is uh, agile or hybrid, right? We often compile a list of risks, and whether we do it the same way the PMBOK does or not, largely we come up with a large set of risks. We identify risks, right? And then we shortlist those risks as to be the biggest ones, the 80-20 rule. And then we actively manage what is left on the final list, right? But very, very few of those teams, even those who are good at risk management, try to look at good things that we can make happen, right? How many of you actually make a conscious effort in a risk identification session to look at how we can make good things, get ideas on how we can make good things on our project happen? I'll give you an example, right? This was a medium-sized IT project where we needed to get a particular expensive licensed software, right? We needed 28 licenses of that. And it was expensive software. The software was something like $5,000 per license. This was a few years back. So 5,000 into 28, $140,000, $140,000. We had our budget for it, right? We knew that this was vital for the project. We had a budget for that $140,000, right? So during the meeting, when we made a conscious effort to identify opportunities, I make it a point in my projects, right? What are the opportunities? Where can we actually save money? Where can we save time? Right? What skills can we use? Right? When I was doing this, one of the team members spoke up and he said, Karthik, I know about this other project where also they are buying around 25 licenses. And he said, Karthik, I also know, I knew the software well. If you buy more than 50 licenses on one PO, you can actually get a 40% discount. Imagine that, right? A 40% discount on $5,000 is $2,000 into the $28 into the 28 licenses I'm buying is $56,000, right? Now we could always work with IT. IT may not know what the timeline is. We could work with IT. We could merge the timeline, combine both projects thing into one PO, and because it is a bulk order, my project saves $56,000. That saving actually could go to my margins or it could be used for something else. right? So, but it is not going to happen on its own. Just as with risks, we need to find an opportunity owner, right? We need to find out who is going to follow through on this. And we try our best, just as we try to eliminate opportunities, either by eliminating them or mitigating them and things like that. We do the opposite here. I've had this work on multiple projects. In fact, when I share this tip in PFP, oftentimes 4 months, 5 months later, one of my Biju Nair said he did the same thing in one of our projects. So Biju, maybe when we go to the next slide, you can share exactly what it was, unless it is confidential. But imagine if we find some 10, 12 things, right? But oftentimes we are so focused on the red of the negative risks that we don't spend time on the opportunities, right? If we make it a conscious effort, so I tell my team for every 75 negative risks that we find, we make a big effort to find at least 25 opportunities. Those 25 may boil down to only 7 or 8 that we actually follow through on. But here we are making our luck. We are finding ways of saving money and time on our projects. So this is also something that's very, very practical. Include it as part of your risk management exercise. At first, your team members may find it a little difficult because they're not used to doing it. Praveen either has a question or a comment. Maybe Praveen, you can share at the end of this. We can have you unmuted. So let's first go with our friend who said he will share. Sorry, the name skipped my mind. You said you used it in one of your projects, so if we can unmute him, he can share very quickly.
Yeah, Karthik, this is Viju on the line once again.
Go ahead, Vijay.
So actually, this is a slightly confidential project, and this had to do with upgrading from Windows 7 to Windows 8.
Mm-hmm.
We had a scenario coming up across where the license cost was coming up, shooting up a little high. And during our internal audit, we realized that we were having some licenses which were actually not license compliant as such. Devices were not license compliant.
Mm-hmm.
The compliance check clubbed up together is where we did this exercise, and that is the time it is that discussing the whole thing, and this was on a coffee table where I was discussing with the finance team, and I realized that there are different departments also who are doing the same thing. And where I connected all the different departments, then had a meeting with them, took the numbers, contacted the Microsoft account manager at an enterprise level, and then beautiful deal, and then ensure that we get a complete through going ahead as such. This was
Awesome. So
really worked
awesome. So excellent. So sometimes what we do is we, instead of buying named licenses, we buy concurrent licenses, especially when there are teams that work during the day and at night. So instead of buying 50 licenses, we'll buy 30. If there's one team that will use 27 at night and 3 will be allotted to my team, during the day I will use 27 because it's you can have unlimited users, but only 30 users can be there at a time. So instead of buying 50, we'll be able to buy 30 concurrent licenses. So this time, because there are tips that I think somebody else said they'll share, and this is somebody who hasn't shared before. So if we could have that person unmuted, Girishji.
Hi, this is Jalil here. Can you hear me?
Yes, Jalil, go ahead.
Hey, this is about one of the complex project that I was part of it. Okay, and as we went ahead into the requirement gathering, we found that we are running out of luck. We just cannot do it. But this turned out to be such an opportunity that today we have a US patent on the same solution that we gave.
Wow.
So I'm very grateful for that itself because I myself is now part of that patent. So it was like to begin with, it was like, to be very frank, hopeless. But as we got into that and then turned out into an opportunity, now we could say that we have a patent on that itself. So that's what I would see, that definitely sometime it works.
Excellent, excellent, Jalil. But like I said, unless we have that mindset and the mind open, like looking at the green, right? Looking for opportunities, it will not happen automatically. Sometimes there'll be scope that drops out, like the Moscow philosophy scope that drops out. So we know that that is a requirement for the client, but they didn't have budget now. Sometimes I'll pass it on to a marketing team saying, hey, the client has this need. We didn't have budget on this project. Why don't you try and sell it to them later? And then that turns out to be an opportunity for the company. So moving on to tip number 9, we're just a little bit behind the time, maybe 5-10 minutes, but we'll try and make up. So this is uplift and win with empathy. So this was an important brochure design project for one of my clients, who was a marketing agency, right? The project manager calls me one day and says, "Hey, Karthik, key designer went on vacation. I'm not able to contact him by phone or any other means. I've tried to ask his friends, but he's not talking to them also, the colleagues to the project." And we were looking at why, right? So in the actual book, this is a project manager who's actually talking to his mom at the end of the day. The mom is a retired HR manager, and the mom asks, "What is it? Can you think of why that guy would do?" She asks, "This has been a troublesome designer right from the start." He says, "No, no, no. He was one of the best contributors. I don't know why this happened." So then she says, "Is there something you told him, or something the client told him recently, or something like that?" And the project manager realizes that in one of the meetings, he was rather rude on this person, because he had got some gullies, he had got some firing from his boss. So in a meeting, he loses calm. And similar to that seeing green situation, right? The designer thinks, "I'm working so hard. I am one of the key people on the project." But, the mom says, how would you feel if you are in that situation, right? The person is doing all of that. He is a key person. He is a great contributor. Just because your boss shouted at you in public, you have said something nasty to him, right? So when I went through the PMI Leadership Institute Masterclass, which is like a one-year program in global leadership with participants from 30 different countries. Sorry, it was 30 people from 16 different countries, right? Again and again, we were told about the importance of empathy. Right? Empathy is not feeling sorry for someone. Empathy is to say, if I were in that situation, I'm sorry for this repeated graphic. This should have been the empathy graphic, right? Losing that key designer is going to be an issue. So we looked at the reasons for the absence. We found out that he was shouted at, right? How would I feel if I was in this situation? Then I basically write him a note saying that I just realized that at that meeting I said something rather rude. You didn't deserve it. Whatever the reasons may be, I apologize. Right? There is no ego in accepting that you're wrong or in apologizing if we made a mistake. Right? And we were able to turn this situation around with a little bit of humility and applying empathy. So empathy is something, if you ask me for one of my key skills in leadership, I would say it is empathy. Even sometimes you can apply empathy the reverse way, right? Let's say there is your boss, who's, I sometimes use it even with my 21-year-old son, right? I say things to him, he doesn't understand. So sometimes I tell him, "Rahul, if you were daddy and I was Rahul, how would you feel in this situation? I tell you these things, and how would you feel if you're faced with this kind of behavior?" So sometimes with team members, sometimes even with bosses, right? I would not say, "What would you do?" I would say, what would be your suggestion or advice in this situation? These are the factors that are limiting my decision. You're a senior person, you've had a lot of experience. I'm sure you can give me a suggestion on how I can handle this better. Now you're forcing them in their mind to process all that situation and all that thing. And then they will start realizing, now be in your boots. Some bosses, some team members' attitude is bad, this won't work, right? I'm talking about the 90% of the cases, not the 10% of cases this won't work. And that's a general theme with all the techniques I'm talking about in this session. You can always find a 10% situation where this may not work. And I agree. This is not a silver bullet. It won't work hundreds of times. Just as with reverse empathy won't work with everybody else. This was a tip that I also shared that 2019 at the Dublin EMA conference, when we did 7 effective steps to superb leadership, right? When we do this communication, when we act with that, if somebody on your team is being unreasonable, your boss, your customer, Try to put yourself in their situation. It doesn't mean what they are doing is right, but there is a good chance that you will feel less upset about being treated that way, and you can use reverse empathy. It's also something that has really worked on my projects. So I see that we have a total of 15 minutes left. So we need to keep a little bit of time for Q&A, summary, and my 10th technique. So if there's one person who'd like to share an experience or ask a question on this technique, please type sharing now and Girish or Sunil will unmute you. Anyone? Give it another 20 seconds.
Yeah, I would like to share again. I'm sorry, repeatedly I'm trying to, give some of my experiences. It's fine.
No. You're most welcome. If nobody else, very few others are sharing, your experience is valuable to everyone. Some people, maybe they're just feeling shy. Go ahead, Raghuveerji. Go ahead, Raghuveerji.
Okay. I'm audible, right?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. Yeah. This is a very, very current situation which I'm facing right now. I am actually the operations head and I have four project managers handling four different projects, which are large projects.
Mm-hmm.
So out of those four, we have a regular meeting and all that, and we always have this session of praising each other, getting information from each other on their experiences. One particular person is there who is actually trying to get sympathy on why he is not able to perform.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I have had multiple sessions with him one to one, and also accommodated him so many times. Like in the last 2 years, I have accommodated him, but he has not changed, which is that
Mm.
10% of the activity which you are
Yeah.
saying. And unfortunately, he has resigned with a short notice period, which I have just, it was yesterday, 2 days back only.
Oh, okay.
So I have
Okay.
rejected it. Now, my next thing will be to meet him one to one again. He is out of station, and maybe, try to uh, tell him about what you just told, that we see what would happen if you are in my
Mm-hmm.
shoes and XYZ, and try to make sure that he is retained. Although he's a good guy who works in a professional manner, but there are some attitudes of his which actually demeans the team. Okay, like
Mm-hmm.
he's shouting at people and all that.
Oh, that's tough. Mm.
So then there is no hope, because if the collapse is on the project, then I have to relieve him. So that is what I wanted to share. But there are, of course, one more person who has improved drastically. He has understood his role and he knows now what is to be done. He coordinates. My intervention in the project is very less now. So there are cases where things have improved, and there are cases where we have to take some decision. So thank you very much for the input. Yeah.
Super. So when you talk to him, you can actually tell him that I don't want to be emotional, but I'll share what the facts are, what I see from my side. You can correct me if you want. And what would you do if you're in my situation? And hopefully, for the sake of that person and your project, things will work out. But yeah, we have to remain optimistic, but we also have to be prepared for the worst, because often senior people, we know that if the attitude is bad, if the attitude doesn't change, no amount of effort that we can do will change it. So Biju also seemed to be not on mute. Was there something you wanted to share, Biju?
Yeah, what I wanted to say is this technique definitely works for me. In fact, I had the same experience like what Raghu just not shared, where a very good resource of mine, because of in a project meeting with another senior resource, there was an argument, and as a resultant of that, he took it on himself as a personal insult, and resulting into he putting on his paper. And that for me was like a big blow, because he was again one of the critical resource for me on a particular module which was again very overall from project perspective, it was only 20% weightage, but that 20% was actually looking to the 80% part of it. So it was
Mm-hmm.
of it. So then what I did is instead of talking and putting on the mails and other things, I just had a talk. In fact, I just for me the coffee table, I don't know, somehow works for me wonderfully.
In
So
fact,
again,
right on the screen, we have a coffee cup on a table. If you realize that image, this let's discuss is actually put in a cup of coffee. taken from the angle above.
Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, so it worked for me. I had a heart-to-heart discussion with him, and then during the discussion, what I did was focus on the positive things that he has done and how it has contributed overall, not only at an organization level, but even at his personal level. Because one thing that I've seen that when I'm in a team as such is when because it's not like for me, the team is not that big as such. So I'm able to have a personal as well as a professional contact with all my team members and especially the key resources. So I was able to share with him and explain him how he has developed another thing, and then I was able to overcome part of it. And again, now he's back and for doing a star performer for my team as such, and everyone is happy with it.
And once again, you took that proactive step. So we could have said, this is what he's saying, it is not in my control, I'll let it go. Rather than let it go like that, you actually took that step, and obviously that helped. So very quickly, 2-3 minutes on this last technique, and I'll do a quick summary. And I probably have another 5-6 minutes for Q&A. So the last one is leveraging Agile and Waterfall technique. This was a full another, I think, 90-minute presentation that I did at Dublin in Ireland as part of the EMEA Congress. So this is why I asked the question at the beginning, right, about Agile Waterfall techniques. It was good that a large part was Agile, but people were so passionate about Agile, right? I know Priya Patra, for example, is a big proponent of Agile. And I'm not saying she talks bad about Waterfall, but there are some very passionate people who believe so much in Agile that they think Waterfall is a waste. Once again, I'm not saying Priya is like that, right? Once again, there are proponents of Waterfall traditional projects who say Agile, that is only for IT. Agile is only if you have a client who is co-located. Agile won't work with new clients, and large parts of it may be right, right? But it is not necessarily Waterfall apartment. In fact, that session was called vaulting over the Agile waterfall, right? Agilely vaulting over the waterfall, right? Each method has merits and demerits, right? And there are good things that we can learn from each of those techniques. Agile can use certain waterfall techniques. Similarly, waterfall can use some Agile techniques. So even if you're currently not using Agile, look at some of the things like stand-up meetings, right? We say meetings are places where the minutes are kept. That is the minutes of meeting, but the hours are lost, right? Because there is endless chatter. It's not done in an effective manner. Things don't stick to the agenda, right? For important things, we can still use startup meetings in waterfall projects, and I found it to be extremely useful. I'm just giving a few examples. The chapter in my book talks about a lot more of them. Estimation we saw is a big issue in all projects. We can actually take a group of seasoned people in a particular task, right? Get together on a coffee table, as Biju said, right? And we can discuss our experiences. We can look at the pluses and minuses. We can actually use the planning poker cards, even in a waterfall project, for that 20% of estimates that could have an 80% impact. I found great success in doing those things. In terms of waterfall effects on agile projects, oftentimes you're so focused on that sprint, right, that agile teams tend to lose sight unless we do it as scaled agile or those sophisticated versions, right? Unless we do it that way, agile teams tend to lose focus on the bigger picture of why the project is happening, right? In the phrase is used, right? Missing the forest for the trees. We are looking so much at the trees that we don't realize what role they have to play in the entire forest itself. Similarly, there may be multiple teams. Oftentimes, there's so much focus on that particular sprint and that particular team that dependencies with other teams doing another sprint get lost. So these are things focusing on the big picture. Dependencies are done much better in waterfall. So to cut a long story short, what I'm saying is that Agile can benefit from things that are good in waterfall and the other way about, and hybrid can do both. So any of you who are doing hybrid projects that have done this kind of a thing, very quickly we'll take one person and then I'll go to the summary and Q&A because we are at 6 minutes left. Anyone would like to share? We'll give it 30 seconds. Looking at the clock. I'm sure all of you do these things, but it's a good idea to look a little bit deeper because techniques evolve in all those methodologies, right? New things that keep coming up. If we just think that we know everything, if we don't look at new things, we become a dinosaur. So I guess nobody is sharing as of now. So I'll go into those. I'll just summarize those techniques quickly, right? We said serve as CEO. We said upgrading senior management engagement. I'm sorry, it's not experience, it's engagement. Communicating with who, what, when, why, and how. We spoke about tailored communication. We spoke about the 80-20 rule of concentrated 80% efforts on the critical 20%. We spoke about excelling with cultural cognizance. We spoke about selling scary change, understanding that projects are new, people are not comfortable with change, selling that. We did that exercise, seeing red. We spoke about opportunities and finding your own luck. We spoke about uplifting and winning with empathy. And we just did leveraging Agile and Waterfall techniques. Was there a pattern to these slides? I told you there are small underlines, this, that. Was there a pattern to the slides? I told you I'm trying to see whether you're awake. The person who finds out what was the pattern. So let me go back to the pattern, right? Service CEO, upgrading senior management engagement, communicating with who, what, when, why, and how, concentrated 80% efforts on the critical 20%, excelling with cultural cognizance, selling scary change, seeing red, finding your own luck. So Biju and I had said how to be successful, and right you are, Biju. So you'll get that shout out. So you'll see the underlined letters, all of it add up to successful. And that's how I sequenced it. And there are 52 different tips in my actual book. I selected 10 of them to be most useful. I actually do project success workshops, more interactive online also. So this is something maybe we can consider doing with your teams, or we can do it through PMI Mumbai chapter itself as a PMI Mumbai chapter workshop, a 4-hour workshop perhaps, where we can look at things. So the last poll before we go into Q&A, how many of these 10 tips do you think you can use for project success? The poll has been launched. I covered 10 tips. I chose them carefully, not to be theoretical. I chose them to be what has worked for me and with my mentees who actually implement it on projects. So obviously there'll be 10% of situations where any of these tips may not work, but I chose things that are actually useful. So I don't want to influence the poll results. So please submit how many of these you think will be useful, which you can use. So another 10 seconds, Girishi, we can close the poll. 5, please vote. Yeah, we can close the poll now. Yeah, so no answer was around 40%. So all 10 people says 24%, which actually translates to more than 50%, right? So between 7 and 9 and all 10, that's almost 80% of the people who responded. I'm not looking at the 40% of people, 10% who didn't respond. So thank you very, very much for that. That is my shot of motivation and inspiration for doing this session. So I believe I picked up all the boxes I had in the agenda right at the beginning. I mentioned I'll cover 20 failure factors. I said we will look at 10 time-tested techniques. I said we'll try and make it as engaging as possible. So the one thing is, when we attend workshops, when we attend sessions, when we attend a conference, we like to hear what the speaker says, and in our mind we think, this could be useful, that could be useful. But then we go on to life, we go on to projects, challenges happen, and we find out 1 year down the line that we didn't use any of them. You might already be using some of these. Maybe you learned some new things today. But my real request, my real satisfaction will come from if you used one of these. We'll connect on LinkedIn, drop me a note. I may be having a very bad day one day, but one of my workshop attendees or one of my PhD students says, "Hey, Karthik, we spoke about this in one of your sessions. I used it and it helped in project success. It helped me. And that really brightens up my day when I see a note like that. So hopefully you'll use these. Hopefully we'll see one of these. So what I will do is just before I go to Q&A, I'll come back on the slide. This is my contact info. You may want to take a screen grab or a picture of this on your I follow everybody who follows me on Twitter. I love to stay connected on LinkedIn. If you have a question, we'll take maybe just for 5 minutes, we'll take questions at the end of this, but I wanted you to be able to take a screen grab of this. We can connect on LinkedIn. We can connect on Twitter. I have around 130,000 connections on projectmanagement.com. In case you have not used that resource, it is free. It's a $250 value. It's like a Facebook for project managers all over the world. But the $250, $249 value per year is completely free for PMI members. So if you have not created a profile on projectmanagement.com, it is highly useful. There are lots of webinars that will help you with the PDUs on that too. So, the actual hard copy of the book is available on Amazon. A Kindle version is also available. But as an attendee to this session, if you'd like a coupon code for a 42% coupon code off my book, please message me on LinkedIn, and through LinkedIn, I'll send you a coupon code. So hopefully we can connect. Hopefully I can learn from all of you, because learning is a continuous process, and all of it. And I really thank all of those who shared their experiences. And before I go to the Q&A, I'm extremely thankful to the PMI Mumbai chapter, and Girish and Sunil. We did dry runs to make sure technology glitches didn't happen. They've been extremely interactive, and PMI is made of volunteers. So hats off to you, Girish ji and Sunil. So now, just for 5 minutes, I'm willing to take questions. Just 2 or 3 questions. So you can either type it as a question and Girish can read out, or I think since we are towards the end, we won't do this mute, unmute thing. You can just type out your questions, Girish can read out, and I'll try to answer. I think it's just 2 minutes over schedule, so maybe 3-4 minutes, Girish, just for questions.
Okay.
Of course, I've taken questions and been interactive all through, so which is why we didn't provide a lot of time for questions at the end, but I'm willing to take a few questions.
No questions.
Okay, so if you have any questions on this session, I shared my email. You can drop a note to me, and Ravi says how to deal with problematic. It disappeared before I could read it. So can you read that out, Girish?
Yeah. How to deal with problematic team members without losing cool.
Yeah, so it is not a difficult thing. It is not an easy thing to do to deal with problematic team members. Once again, you probably want to categorize them into those people where you put in efforts, where there could be a reward. At some point, if the attitude is bad, we can try as much as we can. It may reach a point where it won't work, right? But like I covered in this session, right, being empathetic helps, right? Even those problematic team members, there is another technique that I didn't cover for lack of time. We call it 360 degrees of appreciation in our book, right? Once in 15 days, once every month, all of us in the team, maybe 10 people at a time, 12 people at a time, get together during lunch or tea or something like that. Each of us takes a sheet of paper where at the bottom right-hand corner we write our name, A4 paper, right? And we pass it on to the person to our left. Now that person will write 1 or 2 sentences about what I contributed to the project, right? It will be my name is at the bottom, and then they'll fold that piece of what they wrote and pass it on to the person on the left. My name is still there, right? Now at the end of this, I get a sheet of paper. There are 12 people in my project, and I ask people to make it specific. I don't say Karthik is always positive. Karthik always smiles. I want something specific about what I contributed to that project, right, in the past 2 weeks, right? When we do it that way, once again, the magic that I spoke about, seeing red, seeing green, right, that magic can happen. So difficult team member, one, I would try to apply empathy. I would have a lot of open conversations with them. Well, as a project manager, my job is to get people to be productive on the project, right? There is another tip that I didn't cover chapter in my book where I leverage social media, right? If somebody sends me a Facebook connect request, LinkedIn request, I'll actually accept it, right? There may be some organizations where it's not allowed. There I may not do. But largely, I have 4,500 friends on Facebook. Almost 3,800 of them are either PMI members or people whom I work with, right? I will not stop with just the random like or a comment. I will actually go in and look at what their achievements are, what their interests are, right? This once I saw a team member who was extremely interested in Mohammed Rafi songs, right? I also like Mohammed Rafi. That it shows from the gray in my hair, right? One day at lunch, I said, Vishal, I see that you love Mohammed Rafi songs. What is the best song? So, I read a lot of books. There may be people who read a book about Robin Sharma that I also read, right? There may be somebody who's a hardcore Dhoni fan. So when it comes to a team appreciation, if he's the winner, I'd probably get him 2 tickets to go and see a CSK match. In your case, it may be Mumbai, right? Or I get him a Dhoni shirt, right? Now he thinks this project manager, how does he know? Right? I'll end with one last example from this thing, right? I found that there is a lady in my team who had posted on her Facebook, please pray for my dad. He's having a surgery next week, right? So I spoke to her. I said, Teresa, I saw this. I hope it is not serious. Then she said it is a heart bypass surgery, and she said that she has an issue finding blood donors, right? So I told her, if you don't mind, and only on your approval, I can write a note to our team. There may be blood donors there. There'll be people who will be happy to donate for our team member's father's surgery. And I put in that note. Once the surgery ended, I checked up with her how it was doing. Now, some people may say this is getting too much into the personal domain. I will not exceed certain lines, right? If she said, no, Karthik, I'd not like to share, I'd stop it at that, right? Once the surgery was done, I had the authority to allow people to work from home for 10 days at a time, right? So I said, Teresa, you work from home. We'll assign some of the important items to somebody else, right? But you take care of your dad, right? Now she'd run through a brick wall for me later in the project, right? Because she says we view people as people. Largely for most people, if we view them this way, if we are empathetic, we provide feedback in a constructive manner, right? When we do these things, most people can be turned around. Once again, there's a 10%. I'm not sure whether you're talking about those 10% of people, but those people, after all efforts, at some point, you have to say, I give up, right? But most others, I found that these techniques work with problematic team members. So I'd like to stop with that. I'd really like to thank PMI Mumbai chapter, especially Girishji, Sunil. I think Priya has invited me earlier to one of those chapter exchange. I'd highly recommend you attend those sessions. A lot of stuff, very good knowledge from across the world and perspectives. So thank you very much, Girishi. So I see that probably 6-7 minutes, but sometimes if somebody asks the question about which you're passionate about, I apologize for the 5 or 6 minute overrun.
So
I hope
thank you.
everybody enjoyed it. Thank you.
So thank you for this wonderful and knowledgeable session of 10 time tested techniques for project success. Now we would like to invite our president, PMI Mumbai chapter, Mr. Jacob, for giving vote of thanks and also presenting the certificate to you.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Hi, Karthik. Hi, Girish. It's a pleasure. What we saw today, how many of us? We were about 70 of us here listening to Karthik. There are two things in a presentation. One is form and one is content. Of course, the content was very good as far as Karthik is concerned. But what we must also remember is the form, the kind of presentation he did it, with the help of visuals, with the help of quizzing, with the help of crosswords or whatever it is. And I was watching the form as much as I was watching the content. And I found that this is a great way to make a presentation. And anybody here in this 60 plus audience that we have right now would like to make a presentation, this is a classical template. Thank you very much, Karthik.
Of course, we know each other for a long time, more than 10 years, in fact. I know your charming wife also. We have met many times, and great to have you here as one of the speakers. And from these 10 topics that you talked about, 10 time-tested techniques, I hope there will be a lot of things which we can take back to our workplace from you.
Thanks a million, Girish. My pleasure entirely. We actually have painting going on in our house. So luckily painting is not very noisy. So I also thank Mumbai chapter, bottom of my heart. I'm a member, Girish, Jacob of 26 global chapters. I think I've been a member of Mumbai chapter for the last at least, I think, close to 10 years. So also contribution from me as a member.
And for you and for everybody's information, we are having our national conference, which is actually a South Asian conference here in Mumbai in the month of December. I see a lot of people here, a lot of attendees who are from outside the country, outside India, people from Sri Lanka, people from UAE, people from Africa. Welcome to all of you. Nice that you have been here on a Sunday morning, whatever the time is there. Good morning, good afternoon. And this particular thing that you see right now on your screen is a small token of appreciation from our side. And we hope that we have more such things in the future. We do have a lot of interactions in the Mumbai chapter. Please keep tuned in. And those who would like to do training on project, MS project, we are having one in April. It is open to everyone. We also have PMP training, which is happening every month. That is happening in April also. So I think that is sums up everything. Thank you very much, Karthik. We'll meet somewhere.
Absolutely. Stay safe, everyone. Keep shining, keep smiling, and keep inspiring. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Have a good day.
Thank you. Karthik ji, you will be receiving this soft copy of certificate in mail.
Super, Girishi. And if I could just have the transcript of the chat, I'll be able to find out who got the answers and some of the feedback at the end. I could read out all the feedback that people had typed at the end.
Okay, we'll do that.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Have a good day. Good night.